And you may hear the sounds of birds and donkeys and pheasants and rooks. We're in the heart of the countryside here. And this is my studio where I do a lot of my work. Normally I have a screen, but I thought it might be just nice for you to see where I am. I'm just remembering that the body is always in the moment. The body is like the great forest. The body is like the great oceans of the world. It's continually present, just doing its thing. And so as we just sink into the body, as we become aware of the body, perhaps the feeling of your feet on the floor, on the earth. We are joining that flow. Or just the simple movement of your breath. And so just consciously joining this moment, this flow of the moment. And just checking to see if there's any unnecessary tension. Just take a look, perhaps at your face, forehead, eyes, lips. And classically in meditation, the tongue is resting on the roof of the mouth, but actually that's just a natural place for the tongue to be. And shoulders and neck. Sensing down your arms into your hands, making sure the hands are not clasped, but are just open and relaxed. Just checking into the chest and the belly. And the legs, thighs, the calves, and your feet. And so this is the third session where I'm taking the opportunity to remind you of certain essential truths or principles that we work with in Tai Chi Movement for Wellbeing that are the heart of it. And before the Tai Chi movements of well-being, they were the heart of my Tai Chi school, Rising Dragon Tai Chi. And just to say that, and particularly for today, but that each principle is like a jewel. And really, it's very difficult to describe the whole jewel of the principle. And so, particularly, for example, with Tai Chi Movement for Well-being, for TMW, often we take a particular aspect of the principle so that it's simple and accessible for people. But what I'm doing here is really speaking, as it were, from the jewel itself. So there may be some ways of speaking about the principles, or perhaps today's principle, in a way that might be slightly different from how you might have had it context for you in your training. But so just to remain open and relaxed, and just let it kind of wash over you. Don't worry if you maybe, I can't imagine you won't have heard it before, but in case it's something new and you're going to, but that's not the principle. But as I understand it, just be aware that I'm kind of shifting my awareness into a slightly different sort of aspect of it. So my job is to kind of broaden out your understanding, just to remind you, but also to broaden out your understanding, to dimensionalize it, if you want to put it that way. And so, if you remember, these principles are really a discovery of just how it is in life. That sooner or later, we first of all become present to something. We stop being caught in the drama of it, or we're not caught enough that somehow we can just move slightly to the side, and we begin to become present to it rather than an actor in it. And if we, or as we allow that, something starts to soften in us. There's a natural process of relaxing, of releasing, of allowing something to be, and that was last week's contemplation. And if we can stay just a little longer, or if you observe your life, at some point there is this engagement of the heart. There is this natural arising of compassion. It's like a warm embrace. And sometimes we resist it because we're still kind of caught in we don't want to forgive. We don't want to understand another because we're still, in our position. Perhaps correctly. And somehow we kind of feel it's betrayal of ourselves if we forgive another, or if we, open our heart to them. And really, if you look at that place, actually what we're doing is punishing ourselves. What we're doing is keeping ourselves in our own prison. So I want to start there. And perhaps of the three principles, this third principle is the most difficult to talk about. I could say simply that the third principle is about love. I could say simply that the third principle is about being, the truth of who we are. There, that's done. That's simple, huh? But, what does that mean? Or what is it if you observe this movement in your life? This movement of these three kind of movements which allow us to come back to ourselves finally, and the healing, if you like, of the wound. That first movement of becoming present, that second movement of surrendering, of relaxing, of allowing something to be, and then this third movement where we kind of come back into ourselves, into our heart, into a hearted relationship with what's happened. What is that? What is that movement? Is kind of what I'm going to try and talk about, and then lead a simple meditation to encourage you to turn towards that place. And there's no guarantee that I'm going to be amazingly clear for a start. And there's no guarantee in the meditation that it will lead you where I want it to lead you. Sooner or later it will, which is one of the reasons why we're recording these sessions, for you to listen again and take the journey. For me, it all starts with what I call the original no. For if the heart were a word, it would be yes. The true heart, not the heart that we control, but the true heart, the heart of true nature. If it were a word, is simply yes. Just yes. You know, there's a saying in Buddhism. There's the Buddha's smile, which is the smile of unbearable compassion. So who can smile the smile of unbearable compassion? Finally, sooner or later, we say yes. But not yet. But when we say yes, that moment of releasing the no, yes. But if we rewind, you know, we arrive in life, you see it in little babies, just full of light, full of natural joy, full of natural irritation, just totally there. Can cry all day. In the Tao Te Ching, it talks about like how a baby can cry all day and not get hoarse, whereas if an adult you try and cry all day, you get hoarse pretty quick. It's because it's not natural anymore. So here we are, we've arrived, and something happens sooner or later. Something happens where somebody says, no, not like that. And in that moment, we become separate. We go, what? We sort of realize that we are not this yes, but there is a no. It's a big shock. And so what happens is that because love is also present, we kind of say, well, so then how do you want me to be? So that it's a yes, so that you can see me. How do you need me to be? And we begin a process of contortion. We begin this process of separation. Closing of that heart principle. But behind that no, or behind that tension, behind that, well, how do you want me to be then? Is the truth of who we are. Zen saying, show me your true face. Which is suggesting that we don't show our true faces. We show the face that we think the other person wants to see. But behind that mask, behind that social face, is the real face, the true face, the true heart. Sometimes I've called it my secret place. And the tragedy is that we might show one person who we really are, and the rest of the time we're kind of hidden, we're kind of looking through our fingers, and then we just might show ourselves like, ooh, like that. It's like a secret place. Because when we showed ourselves, we got hurt. No, not like that. We got hurt. Someone said, no, not like that. And that hurt. And so the barrier comes up. We hide. And I've called it my secret place. Something that I found in meditation was this secret Richard, true Richard, a heart of Richard. And then I started to see how I hide that heart of Richard from 99.9% of the world. And so I could only be myself in very specific situations, and starting to see what a waste that is. Because I and you have come here to be. And there is only one of us in the whole wide world. There's only one of you. And part of the path, if you would like the spiritual path, or the path of well-being, is to allow this part of us to flow, to have its place. And that sort of third part of the TMW sequence is devoted to really allowing ourselves the space in the privacy of my own home to be myself. Truly, here am I. And here is all of me. Just as I am. Here are all my faults. Here's all my genius. Here's my sadness. Here's my doubt. Here's my joy. Here's my peace. All of that from the heart's point of view. The heart says yes to all of that. The heart doesn't say yes to this and no to that. The true heart says yes. And some of you may know, for a while I worked in the Samaritans, and the essence of the Samaritans is that it is just yes. Whoever you are, you phone up and we say yes. by the very fact of allowing you to say, well, actually, I'm suicidal and I'm going to kill myself now. As hard as it can be, and it is hard, the essence of that deep listening is yes. So when there's enough heart, we see ourselves. When I have enough heart, I see that part of me that's hiding. I see, for good reason, the barriers I've put up to protect myself. That I have heart for that young boy that was denied, if you like. And I have heart for the one that has had to hide all that time. So the third principle, we could say, is this engagement of heart, both in terms of, this yes, it's kind of dynamic is yes, to allow something to be. It's dynamic is also, the heart of who I am, which is not my personality. It's a kind of essence, unique light. And that I, like you, have kind of come to add that light, to add that uniqueness to the world. And so once you begin to understand that, what you want to do is to start bit by bit, is to start to undress. And we are afraid because we don't want to be re-traumatized. So it's a slow process, but essentially that's where it's going. It's coming back to that original place before, as it were, before the no. It's learning to find that place that is before the no. And when that happens, everything becomes the language of love. So I want to just take a few minutes to speak about the language of love. If you're bored, and you may well be bored in this time, the usual things we have to distract us are no longer present. Or you may feel alone, isolated, abandoned. Just feel in that moment, or just now, where is the nourishment? Where can I be nourished? How can I nourish myself? And one of my teachers, called it Emmanuel, talked about taking the hand of a child to cross the road is a monumental act of love. Now, when we think of love or we think of compassion, we think of the grand gesture. We think of saving someone's life or whatever that may be, that grand gesture. But in the flow of life, in the flow of a day, in the flow of a week, in the flow of a year, how often do you get to make that grand gesture? Well, rarely, actually. So most of the time we don't think of ourselves as being hearted. But when you start to think about taking the hand of a child to cross the road, when you think about asking somebody, would you like a cup of tea? When you think about another human being, with love and compassion or kindness, or I wonder how they are, that's love. That's the heart. When you give yourself a good hot bath with some Epsom salts or candles, that's love. When you cook a meal, when you choose this apple and not that apple because there's something about that apple that really touches you, that's love. That's the heart. That's the third principle, in action. When you start to look at it that way, our language of love actually is huge. And when we're in that place, where we're isolated, it's a good question to ask. You might not put it this way, but it's what's here for me to say now is, dear friend, how can I help? What do you need? Well, I need to be touched, but there's nobody here, so I'm feeling abandoned. But as it were, inside, but I'm here. Dear friend, I'm here for you. That inner dialogue is the language of love. Just allowing, it's the, so there is this place of isolation. There's this place of feeling totally unnourished and unloved. And then we criticize ourselves. We re-traumatize that original no. Okay, yes. Yes. How can I help? And it's learning this, it's learning to first of all feel what it is, and then learning to recognize it. So it's, and if you just take that example of not where you don't, but where you do, we start to see that language of love. When we recognize the language, when we recognize another's language of love, that also is a very healing moment. I might see somebody as controlling. I might experience it as controlling. Actually, what's happening is that they're caring. That's their language of love. Someone might see my apparent disinterest as some kind of insult. But actually, you could say, but that I'm giving them space. That's my language of love. What is your language of love? If we take aside the self-criticism or the criticism of others, how do you express your care? How do you express your love? How do you express your true nature? How does yes manifest? So there's the language of love. There's that quality of yes. And there is this heart of who I truly am, behind the disguise that I've learned to present to another. And in the end, it's more painful to hide than it is to show yourself. And it's a really interesting place in the journey. There's a point before then when I want to hide more than I want to show myself. But as this muscle grows, as this understanding grows, there comes a point when actually it's more hurtful to me to hide myself from myself. And that's a real evolutionary watershed moment. So just keep an eye out for that one. Or acknowledge it when it's there. You're saying yes. That's the third principle in action. You're saying yes. Finally, yes, this is who I am. This is how it is. And the fear is, of course, finally, the fear is that if we say yes, it's kind of fixed forever, but it's not like that. I had this morning, I was thinking about this talk just in my meditation, contemplating. I remember that film about Gandhi, and a particular point in the film where he is leading a group of people all dressed in white. I think it's to the salt factory, and they get, and you're watching the film, you're just seeing Gandhi and a few other people, and you're seeing the guards. They've got big sticks, and Gandhi wants to get into the salt factory, and it's of course not allowed. And so the guards say, well, we're gonna beat you, and if you come any closer. And so Gandhi and his followers move in, and they start clubbing them down. And then another group of people come and they club them down, and another group of people come, and the camera becomes, in my memory, the camera becomes the guards, and the guards look up and they just see almost an endless stream of people. And they know in that moment that there is no way they can keep clubbing people forever. The human heart has to awake. And when it awakes, one human being cannot harm another human being. You imagine that guard. He's got a position, he's got the rule, he's got authority behind him, and away he goes, whacking people over the head, breaking their skulls. And they're wearing white, so it's blood all over the place. You can only do that for so long before you wake up, to the horror of it. And that was the power of people like the Dalai Lama and eventually Nelson Mandela and Gandhi and countless thousands and millions of people understand that principle of the heart. And Desmond Tutu and the process of reconciliation in South Africa. If you just tell me your story as the torturer, sooner or later, that third principle starts to emerge, and I see you, and you see me, and we're done. It's hugely powerful. So, whatever in that talk has touched you, then really let it touch you and take it from there. And if there's some things that I've said that somehow don't make sense to you, then just say yes and let them be. They don't have to make sense. They're my truth. They don't have to be your truth. But if something has touched you and you recognize what I'm saying, then really let it touch you. Really let yourself say yes. So in this moment, that's all that is here to be said, as it were, from the heart of this space. And so let us take a moment. If you need to, I need to have a little drink, and we're going to take a short meditation, short-ish.